The 24th of June 1982, British Airways Flight 9 was flying at the altitude of 37,000 feet. Then suddenly, a strange bright light started shining outside the plane, while the radar showed that the weather was absolutely clear. Then suddenly, all 4 engines of the plane failed. Let's find out what happened that day in today's video. The 24th of June 1982, British Airways Flight 9, a Boeing 747 plane at Heathrow Airport, London, was en route to Australia via Mumbai. 248 passengers and 15 crew members boarded the plane. The plane was being flown by 30-year-old First Officer Roger Greaves, 41-year-old Captain Eric Moody. Apart from this, another flight engineer, Barry, was also present. At 20:40 hours, the plane was coming from Heathrow Airport via sea towards the Indian border and was flying over Jakarta, passing through small islands. The captain went to the washroom after dinner. During this, he saw smoke coming from the corner. Immediately, he went into the cockpit. The sight he saw after that was truly astonishing. Bright light was shining in the windscreen of the plane. This much brightness is not visible even after entering the storm clouds. He looked at the weather radar. According to radar, everything was normal. No storm or cloud was visible for miles. Despite the clear weather, this plane was glowing. The pilots had never seen, read, or heard anything like this in their entire career. A pilot reached the passenger cabin. Light was coming out rapidly from the wing of the plane. Even the engine of the plane was glowing. Smoke slowly started filling the cabin and cockpit. All the pilots had to face problems for which they had never been trained. No one had the answer as to why such bright light was emanating from the plane. It looked very beautiful, but gradually it started taking a terrible form. As the plane moved ahead, smoke was filling the cabin more and more. About 4 minutes passed like this, and then the first officer shouted,
"Engine number 4 has failed."
Flames were coming out from engine number 4. Within the next 1 minute, the remaining 3 engines also failed. All the engines were engulfed in flames. At this time, the altitude of the plane was 37,000 feet. The first officer immediately made Mayday call.
Jakarta, Jakarta, Mayday, Mayday, Speedbird 9. We have lost all 4 engines. We are leaving 370.
But ATC could not hear properly. They thought engine number 4 was failed. A nearby Garuda Indonesia plane relayed the message to the Jakarta control. Only then did they understand the severity of the situation. The plane had now dropped to an altitude of 26,000 feet from 37,000 feet. Due to failure of all engines, oxygen supply inside the plane also stopped. Planes also have an APU, that is auxiliary power unit, which supplies oxygen for breathing in such conditions. But unfortunately, something went wrong with the APU too. After this, the altitude, airspeed, and all the sensors of the plane started giving wrong indications. On the other hand, all the passengers were also very scared after seeing all this and started writing notes to message their relatives, so that after the death, the last letter could be sent to the family members. The glide ratio of a Boeing 747 is 15:1. That means if the plane goes 15 feet forward, it will also go down 1 foot. In this way, this plane can glide forward without the engine. Accordingly, the pilot calculated whether the plane could be taken to Jakarta Airport or not. Well, here they faced the biggest disappointment because there was a huge mountain on the way. There was no way this plane could fly over the mountain without an engine. Yes, if a miracle happens and one of the 4 engines starts, then perhaps the plane could have avoided the crash. Pilots were now left with no option but to take risk. Now the plane slowly moved towards the mountain. The first officer said that we tried to start the engine several times, but the engine has not started yet. So what is the guarantee that the engine will start before hitting the mountain? The captain replied that at present our altitude is 20,000 feet. We will keep trying to start the engine until our plane reaches an altitude of 12,000 feet. If the engine starts, then it's okay. Otherwise, we will land the plane in the sea. Landing the plane in the sea is also a good option. Planes are designed in such a way that even after landing in water, they can float for several hours. The captain made an announcement to the passengers.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a small problem. All 4 engines have stopped. We are doing our best to get them going again. I trust that you are not in too much distress.
All the passengers put on oxygen masks and waited for everything to be fine. As the plane descended, the bright light also started decreasing. Now the plane had reached an altitude of about 13,000 feet. Not a single engine of the plane had started yet. Now only one way was left, to land the plane in the sea. Otherwise, it would hit the hill. The plane started being prepared for water landing. Then a miracle happened. Engine number 4 restarted. After a few seconds, the remaining 3 engines started. At an altitude of 13,000 feet, that bright light had also disappeared. Now there was no need for water landing of the plane. The plane flew over the hill and headed towards Jakarta Airport. Complete control of the plane came back once again, but nothing was visible outside. On the other hand, engine number 2 stopped again, but no one cared about it. They were fine with remaining 3 engines still running. Slowly, the plane started coming down. The runway lights were very dimly visible. Due to lack of ILS here, there was a lot of difficulty in landing the plane, but there was no option left except making an emergency landing. So the pilots slowly brought the plane down, and finally, it landed safely. There was no harm or injury to anyone. Somehow, this accident was averted, but many questions still remain to be explored. Why was that light shining? How was the smoke entering the plane? How did all the engines and even the auxiliary power unit of the plane suddenly break down? Let's find out what actually happened. The investigation team observed that the entire exterior of the aircraft was scratched as if it had been scratched with a sharp stone. But the question arises that where can the stone come from at such a height? Therefore, it was examined at a microscopic level. It was later discovered that it was caused by white sand. Such sand can come out of a volcano. After knowing all this, the whole story started making sense. Recently, there was a volcanic eruption in an island in Jakarta. The gas coming out from inside it contains many particles like silicate, ash, stone. The size of the white particles in these clouds is very small and light, about 1 micrometer. Therefore, together with hot gas, it can cover a distance of about 100 kilometers. These light gas clouds had also reached an altitude of 37,000 feet. When the plane passing at high speed started hitting these small particles, then bright light started shining. It seemed as if the entire plane had been swallowed by some light demon. Here, the aircraft's weather radar also only detects water droplets and tells what the weather is like, whether there are clouds ahead or not. Now, because the volcanic ash was extremely dry, weather radar was indicating clear weather. This radar was not able to detect volcanic ash. The volcano emits a lot of silicate particles, whose boiling temperature is about 1100 degrees Celsius, while aircraft engines can heat up to 1400 degrees Celsius. When too many silicate particles entered the engine, they slowly started melting. These molten silicates and sand continued to fill the engine and gradually blocked it. Then within a span of 1 minute, the entire engine stopped. These sand particles were attacking not only the engine, but also all the sensors of the plane. That's why pilots started getting wrong signals in the cockpit of the plane. But as the plane descended, the volcanic ash began to subside, and due to the engine being shut off for a long time, the silicate particles cooled and turned into glass. After this, when the engine was started again, all the glass broke and came out. Now the plane had fallen below 15,000 feet. There was no cloud of sand at this height. The particles emitted from the volcano caused the most damage to the windscreen of the plane. Therefore, the windscreen was completely worn and fogged up. This was the reason why the pilots were not able to see anything. Such an incident had never happened before in history, nor did the pilots know anything about it. The bravery of the pilots saved the lives of all 248 passengers and 15 crew members. All the crew members were also honored with many awards. After this, engine numbers 2 and 3 were replaced, and the dust was cleaned and removed. Later, the aircraft was sent back to London for maintenance. About 19 days after the incident, Singapore Airlines Boeing 747 was passing through the same route when 3 of its engines broke down. After this, emergency landing of this plane was also done. After all this, that path was declared a no-flying zone until the lava stopped flowing from that volcano. This accident taught the aviation industry a lot.
Please help this channel grow by pressing like, share, and subscribe button.